What is up, everybody? This is your boy, Teran Rodriguez, bringing you another edition of Set Point. Well, the NCAA Women's Volleyball Tournament started off with 48 teams, but now only 6 remain. 2 teams have actually punched their tickets into the NCAA semifinals of the Women's Volleyball Tournament, as Washington and Texas both pulled off impressive victories today. How'd they do it? And who were their opponents that they just beat? Also, Wisconsin is in a battle with Florida as we speak, as it's actually back and forth between the Badgers and the Gators. And in men's volleyball, we had Northridge, Cal State Northridge, upsetting Long Beach State. First time since 2016 that occurred. And then Hawaii is still undefeated. They're still the number 1 team in the AVCA coaches polls, and they are the number 1 seed in the Big West Conference tournament. Can the Rainbow Warriors run the table and win the national championship? We'll see. And then we've got all kinds of talk of beach volleyball as UCLA fell. But who did they fall to? And obviously we've got a lot of NCAA women's volleyball tournament talk. All that and more here on Set Point. This is Teran Rodriguez bringing you another edition of Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And welcome one, welcome all to another edition of Set Point. Thank you all for tuning in on this beautiful Monday afternoon. And yes, I had to move Set Point to Monday, but it is what it is. Last week we had it on Monday, pretty much Monday morning where I'm at, but now we've got it in late Monday afternoon. But without any further delay, let's get on into episode 86 of Set Point. I can't believe it's been 86 episodes, but then again, I say that with a lot of episodes when it comes to the show. But before we get into the volleyball action, we do have to make note of our 2 sponsors at IE Sports Radio. The first is Legacy Financial. 2020 was a tough year. However, staying positive, keeping your faith, and continuing to work hard is the goal. If you're in a financial struggle at the moment, you're doing well and you want to get to the next level, or you're looking for a new opportunity to work for yourself and earn more money part-time, give IO a call at 510-928-2104. That number again is 510-928-2104 to book your appointment today. IO and her husband Andrew are just 2 people on a mission to help families build a legacy. You can follow them on Twitter at legacy_uncut. You can follow them on Instagram at sims_uncut. iSports Radio's second sponsor is the Southern California Warriors, a semi-pro football team. The world of semi-pro sports is unlike any other sports organization. Players pay to play in hopes of so many different outcomes, whether it's playing to get film or to try out for professional teams, big-time colleges, or just playing to stay in shape. No matter what, all semi-pro players have one thing in common, and that's playing for the love of the game. The SoCal Warriors have been on a quest to earn titles and give players second chances since 2017. Whether you're in Southern California or anywhere in the world, give semi-pro sports a chance if you love your sport. You may get that second chance you have been waiting for as an athlete. You can follow them on social media at SoCal Warriors. You could follow them on Instagram at Southern California_Warriors. And you could follow and like them on Facebook by going to the search bar and typing in Southern, then the word California, then the word Warriors. So thank you again to Southern California Warriors and Legacy Financial for being the official sponsor of IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. And you can follow IE Sports Radio on Twitter and on Instagram at IE Sports Radio. You can go to the search bar on Facebook and then type in IE, then the word sports, then the word radio, and then poof, you should have it. And also check out IE Sports Radio's website, www.iesportsradio.com. We have a lot going on there. We have our blog. We have You can meet us all there. We have past guests and whatnot, so there's that. As we say hello to Adam Karnick in the chat room. Good evening. He says, "Good evening, Teran. How's the volleyball this afternoon?" Oh, it was great. It was great. Currently, we have Wisconsin and Florida in a battle with one another, and that match is actually tied at 1 set apiece. Earlier today, I actually was on a live call for or a live broadcast, and I broadcasted the Texas-Nebraska women's volleyball match, and Texas was able to pull that one out in 4 sets as they advanced to the Elite Eight for the first time, I think since 2000 and I want to say it was 19. They didn't make it. I believe it was 18 when they last made it. I'm almost certain it was 18. So, yeah. Either way, it's been a long time coming for Texas. They haven't won an NCAA championship since 2012 when they beat Oregon, which that was the true Cinderella team. They beat Nebraska, which was a tough challenge. Nebraska was looking to get back into the Final Four for the first time since 2018 when they were the runner-up of the NCAA women's volleyball tournament. And Nebraska was looking to win its first NCAA championship for the first time since 2016 when they beat Texas in said NCAA championship match. But it was Texas that's moving on. Earlier today, before that match, we actually had quite the big matchup, as it was an absolute thriller of a matchup. Pitt and Washington faced one another. Just to summarize, Pitt took the first 2 sets, which Pitt honestly was probably the most underrated team of the tournament. Just because they finished behind Louisville in the ACC. But then in the third set, Washington just rolled past them, winning that set 25-14. And then in set number 4, that set actually was back and forth. It actually looked like Washington was going to roll past Pitt in set number 4, but then Pitt managed to rally back and tie it up eventually. But then Washington was able to eventually take that 4th set, 26-24. There were a lot of challenges and timeouts in that call, in that set. So it was absolute madness. And then in the 5th set, I think Pitt, in my opinion, just ran out of gas as Washington just steamrolled them in set number 5. I felt bad for Pitt because they have yet to make the Final Four, while Washington is going back to the Final Four for the first time since 2013, I want to say. I believe it was 13. Regardless, it also has been a long time coming for Washington. It's been a long time coming for any West Coast, and not any West Coast team not named Stanford, because even the broadcasters made a joke about the California teams not making it out of the round of 32. Like, every California team got no farther than the round of 32. Pepperdine, San Diego, and UCLA each lost in that round. And the reigning champion Stanford didn't even make the tournament because of everything that went on with their situation. So there's that. Anyway, so before we break down some of the matchups, we actually need to take it from the top. We need to take it from the top and talk about most of the NCAA women's volleyball matchups. We'll start with the top left bracket. So start with Bowling Green and Weber State. So I didn't have much knowledge of Bowling Green and Weber State. Honestly, I went with Bowling Green, and Weber State pulled off the win. It was actually their first NCAA tournament wins in team history, so Weber State made a lot of history, and I feel kind of silly for picking Bowling Green. I didn't know much about either team, though. Like, you can't blame me. All I could tell you about Bowling Green was that they were receiving votes in the AVCA coaches polls, so there's that. The second matchup in the top right corner was UCLA Rider. UCLA, with no doubt in my mind, steamrolled Rider. They were the believe it or not, Rider was the 64th seed. Or, I'm sorry, not 64th seed, 48th seed, while UCLA was the 17th seed. So, Rider was going to need a big night in order to take down UCLA. But it didn't happen. So there's that. So elsewhere in the top right bracket, Missouri beat South Dakota. I was surprised to see South Dakota having such a flat day against Missouri. I thought Missouri was going to fall flat on their face, just because Missouri has been pretty inconsistent against stiff competition, and South Dakota had peaked at the right time after they won the Summit League tournament. So there's that. Now, this one was probably the biggest shocker of the first round. Morehead State upset Creighton. Now, keep in mind, Creighton was one of the host teams for this NCAA women's volleyball tournament, and Morehead State had not won an NCAA tournament game in its team program's history. That was until Morehead State beat Creighton in 5 sets, and I was even mind blown at that. I was like, whoa. And I thought Creighton was better than that, just because Creighton is always a decently good NCAA tournament team. I guess not when it comes to, like, this year, I guess, but oh well. So that was the top right bracket. Now for the bottom left bracket, we had Texas State beating Utah Valley in 4 sets. The only thing that was surprising to me was that Texas State dropped a set against Utah Valley. I'm not trying to bash them or anything, but Texas State has played, of all the teams in the NCAA tournament that came in, all 48 teams, Texas State played the most matches. They played like 30-plus matches going into the NCAA tournament, and they actually caught a big upset before the tournament started as they beat Baylor, which was number 9, in 4 sets, which was impressive. So anyway, other than the Texas State match, we had Pepperdine beating UMBC. That was no surprise. Pepperdine was such a talented team. UMBC was making its first ever NCAA tournament appearance in team and program history, and unfortunately, they ran into the buzzsaw that was Pepperdine, and Pepperdine just cut them down to size. They kind of struggled in that 3rd set, but behind the arm of Shannon Scully and Meg Brown and Rachel Aherns, Pepperdine was just too much for them. Then concluding the bottom left bracket, we had Wright State and Samford. Wright State, I had no doubt in my mind, was going to win this matchup. Samford was making its first, I believe they were making their first NCAA tournament appearance. It was unfortunate that their NCAA tournament appearance was a brief one, but Wright State is just that type of team that has had past experience, and they're pretty challenged in their own conference. So there's that. Now, I obviously have one more match to get into regarding the bottom left bracket, and that is Rice versus North Carolina A&T. Now, this match unfortunately did not get played, and it's disappointing what happened because Rice had, I believe it had one player or one personnel test positive for COVID, and they were unable to compete. So it's basically what happened with VCU's men's basketball team against Oregon, which meant that North Carolina A&T advanced to the round of 32 without having to play 1 point. And it really is a bummer for Rice, because I thought Rice would have been a great dark horse team that was unseeded, because I'm sure they would have beaten North Carolina A&T, and who knows what they could have done against Penn State, and who knows what Rice could have done had they gotten to the Sweet 16 against Texas, and who knows what could have happened with that matchup, because remember, Rice beat Texas in the regular season, and God knows it would have been great to have a rematch. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case. It was so disappointing seeing that Rice had to drop out of the tournament. I was so heartbroken. It's things like that that really drive me up a wall. Anyway, so now let's go to the upper right bracket. We had Georgia Tech beating Lipscomb in 4 sets. I knew Lipscomb was kind of going to be a tough matchup for Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech has good hitters. They have great players on their team. However, Lipscomb is one gritty team. And Georgia Tech, to me, struggles against top-tier competition. Like, look at their matchups against Louisville and Notre Dame and Pitt. They lost them all. I don't even think they took a set off of anybody, which, c'est la vie, but it is what it is. So, Georgia Tech was able to get past Lipscomb, which was no surprise. And then the other ACC team in the upper right bracket was Pitt beating LIU. That was also no surprise. Pitt like I said, was a very talented team, as they have players like Kayla Lunn, Shinaza Ende, I believe her name is. Yeah, Ende, Chiamaka Nwakolo, Sabrina Starks. The list goes on and on for Pitt, and I think they were the sneaky good favorite to possibly make a deep run. Anyway, continuing on with the upper right bracket, we had San Diego taking down A&M Corpus Christian, or Texas A&M Corpus Christian. That was no surprise, just because I don't think San Diego was going to struggle against that team. Even though San Diego was the last 4 team in, I did not see them struggling one bit, just because they have talent on their team. The problem was COVID became a thing, and then they struggled with their last 6 games down the stretch. They went a whopping 2-4, which absolutely was disappointing. And then in the concluding the upper right bracket, we had Dayton beating Towson in 3. Dayton has always been a great perennial NCAA tournament team. The problem with Dayton is that they don't get a whole lot of love, just because this year they haven't been able to face stiff competition because of COVID, and then also they play in the ASUN conference, which, well, that conference isn't really Power 5, and it's not really well known. I think Dayton pretty much runs through that conference year in and year out, so there's that right there. So that's it for the upper right bracket. Now for the last few games of the first round, we have the bottom right bracket. We had High Point beating UCF. Now, High Point made a lot of history. This was actually their first ever NCAA tournament win, and they knocked off UCF. Now, for those that remember last week, I talked about how UCF was kind of a sneaky good team, considering UCF always plays their best volleyball in the postseason. Fair. UCF faltered in that 5th set, honestly. And honestly, I gotta give credit to High Point. That was absolutely an amazing win for their program, and I give them lots of credit in the world. Like, I don't know if UCF was at full strength, but I'll say this: High Point earned that one, no doubt. And lots of history was being made in this tournament. Absolutely amazing. Anyway, moving on, we had Notre Dame beating Army in 4 sets. I was going to say Army West Point, but everyone just calls them Army. Anyway, Notre Dame got off to a rocky start. I was kind of fearing they'd be getting ousted in the first round, but then Notre Dame was able to pick it up in the second set and beyond. So there's that. Then we had Western Kentucky sweeping Jackson State. This, to me, was no surprise. Western Kentucky was probably the most underappreciated team as well, just because they've been ranked all season and they were undefeated, and they don't play a whole lot of stiff they didn't play a whole lot of stiff competition. They played in the Conference USA tournament, or in the Conference USA, and they kind of, unfortunately, didn't get to play too much ranked competition. And I think they were probably the best non-Power 5 school, minus BYU, of course, which got a first-round bye. Bottom line is they were the best non-Power 5 school that didn't get a first-round bye. So there's that. And then concluding the first round, we had UNLV taking down Illinois State. I don't know if I'm pretty sure that was not UNLV's first tournament win, but it was their first tournament win in quite some time, because UNLV had struggled in the Mountain West Conference, as they were pretty much like, I don't know how much they finished every year in and year out, but they were always pretty much the bottom feeders, or like near the bottom, when it came to like teams such as Colorado State and maybe Boise State. Well, this year it was UNLV's year, and they managed to win an NCAA tournament game. So there was that, and that was that for the first round. So the round of 32, we had Wisconsin defeating Weber State in 3 sets. That too was also no surprise, even though it had pretty much been quite some time since Wisconsin had played a match. But they managed to get past Weber State. Now, for the second matchup of the upper right portion of the bracket, we had BYU defeating UCLA. I was very surprised BYU actually they managed to win this match. One, because UCLA is such a talented team. Two, because UCLA has Mac May. And three, BYU suffers from only having 4 upperclassmen, 2 juniors and two seniors. But BYU really let UCLA have it. Primarily in set number 2, when I think they were down like 24-19, and then BYU dodged 9 set points, and then they won that second set 31-29, which I talked about this on the SoCal Supreme Sports Show, saying, how do you lose a set like that? Like, if you're UCLA, you got to be kicking yourself. And UCLA had no momentum after that second set. They had no sense of urgency. They just rolled over, which was, again, disappointing. So I was very surprised BYU won that one. As we say hello to Davidson Crooks, what's good? Hey, I appreciate you tuning in. Just talking about the NCAA Women's Volleyball Tournament. Speaking of the NCAA Women's Volleyball Tournament, let's get a little update on the Wisconsin-Florida match. We have Wisconsin going up 2-1 on the Gators. So, Davidson, it's not looking too good for D-Lock's Florida Gators women's volleyball team. But you never know. Florida's giving Wisconsin a run for their money. But I think Wisconsin's going to pull it out eventually. It's only a matter of time. And if I'm wrong, then I'll be glad to have I'll be glad to have D-Lock dunk on me for doubting his Gators. Okay. Elsewhere in the upper right bracket of the second round, we had Ohio State just demolishing Missouri in straight sets. This was no surprise. Ohio State does have a young team. However, that team was very well coached. Jen Flynn Oldenburg did an outstanding job. And like I said, Missouri struggles when it comes to like upper tier competition. Like, it's kind of weird, honestly. Like, Missouri really struggled against like upper tier competition. And when it came to like some of the mid-tier competition, they struggled to put teams away, and they also lost to Tennessee, which is kind of booty. But oh well. Anyway, also to finish up the upper left second round matchups, we had Florida sweeping Morehead State. That is no surprise right there, just because Morehead State was so inexperienced. And they were facing a fully loaded Florida team, which... Am I surprised Florida would lose that? No. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. Was anyone really going to pick Florida to lose that? No. Anyways, so now that's pretty much that for all the second round matchups in the upper portion of the bracket. Now let's go to the bottom left portion. We had Nebraska defeating Texas State in straight sets. The only concern for Nebraska that match was what happened with Lauren Stivrins. Apparently she got hurt and she sat out the third set, but then Nebraska was able to take down Texas State. So there's that. Now, this next matchup was quite unsurprisingly great, but it wasn't too surprisingly great, but it was kind of obvious who won. Baylor took down Pepperdine in 5 sets as they swept they beat Pepperdine in 5 sets. This was actually the second matchup between the Bears and the Waves, as Baylor was barely Baylor was barely able to beat Pepperdine. They had to grind it out in that 4th set, and Pepperdine was not going away in set 5, but then Baylor just pulled away in the latter part of set number 5, which, well, it really sucks that Pepperdine didn't get out of the round of 32. You'll see why, though. You'll see. But it was a great season for Pepperdine nonetheless, because that team has a lot of upside. The only thing is that I kind of worry is that they do lose 2 good seniors, and one of which being Shannon Scully, the other being Allie O'Hara. But I think if they get another good recruiting class, and they still have Rachel Aherns, and they have other talented players, I think Pepperdine won't be going anywhere. I also do want to make note that why the heck did Meg Brown not get any AP AVCA honors is beyond me. Like, she gets Freshman of the Year in her conference, and she doesn't get any accolades in the postseason. That's ridiculous, man. I think she deserved, like, some AVCA honors or AP honors or something along those lines. Either way, I think she kind of got snubbed, but I hope she uses that as motivation going forward, because Meg Brown does have a great future ahead of her, and the sky's the limit for her and for Pepperdine. So there's that. Moving on with the other second-round matchups in the bottom left bracket, we had Penn State taking down North Carolina A&T. Now, it had been, I think, 2 or 3 weeks since Penn State had last played a match, but they showed no signs of rust against NCAA. It's disappointing because I really wanted to see Rice versus Penn State. I hate what happened with Rice. I really, really hate that happened to them. But unfortunately, stuff happens. And then to close out the bottom left portion of the bracket, we had Texas sweeping Wright State. That sounds about right. Get it? Right State. But Texas basically just steamrolled them. So that's no surprise there. As now let's move on to the upper right portion of the bracket. Minnesota defeated Georgia Tech in straight sets. That's no surprise, just because Minnesota has great defense, not just blocking wise, but digging the ball wise. So I was nowhere near surprised when I saw the Gophers taking down the Yellow Jackets. And believe it or not, Georgia Tech actually won their first NCAA tournament game in quite a while. I don't remember the last time they won off the top of my head. It actually been quite a while since they last made the NCAA tournament as well, as I believe apparently it was like a drought for them. Like it was like more than like a 6-year drought or something like that. As it was their first. They advanced to the second round for the first time since 2004, which that's quite a long time for getting a postseason win in the NCAA tournament. Keep in mind, Georgia Tech won the NIVC last year, but no one really cares for the NIVC. I mean, I care, but not everyone else does, unfortunately. So there's that. Anyway, we also had Pitt upsetting Utah in straight sets. This was kind of not surprising, just because Utah has been utterly inconsistent against decently good teams. It showed in Pac-12 play, and it showed in this match against Pitt, as Pitt was very hungry for a chance to win an NCAA tournament game and advance to the Sweet 16. And they did. It was actually their first ever appearance in the regional semifinals, or first ever appearance in the Sweet 16. So Pitt has always been that kind of cursed team, or the Chicago Cubs of like the NCAA women's volleyball tournament, except they haven't won anything. But Pitt was able to reach the Sweet 16, which is outstanding for them, and I was very happy personally, even though I had some high hopes for Utah. But I knew Utah wasn't going to get out of the round of 32, especially against a team like Pitt. So there's that. And then going forward through the rest of the upper right-hand bracket second round matches, we had Louisville defeating San Diego in 4 sets. Now, I was a little surprised on how Louisville started off. They got steamrolled in that first set. I think it was 25-14. And then second set, Louisville squeaked that second set out. And then the third set, they handled San Diego quite well. And then the fourth set, they were down 21-18. And then Louisville was able to grind it out and win set number 4, 29-27, and advance to the Sweet 16, which is something they are all familiar with because they managed to upset Texas last year. So there's that right there for Louisville. And then the last matchup in the upper right portion of the bracket in the second round, we had Washington defeating Dayton in 5 sets. Now, This was kind of surprising, but not. But when you think about it, it wasn't really, just because Dayton, like I said, is a great NCAA perennial powerhouse. Well, not like a powerhouse, not like Wisconsin or Stanford or anything like that, but they're probably the most underappreciated team in the tournament. So I think they really gave Washington a run for their money, but Washington was just ultimately able to grind that one out. So good for the Huskies. Now for the bottom right portion of the bracket, as Purdue was able to sweep High Point. Not too big of a surprise there, just because Purdue has a really legit team. High Point was just won its first ever NCAA tournament game, and unfortunately, they just didn't have enough in the tank to take down Purdue. And the turning point of that match was when High Point blew a 24-19 lead, and Purdue was able to come back and win that 26-24. It sucks for High Point. It would have been cool to see them take a set off of Purdue, but Purdue's just that good. They're well coached as well. So there's that. And then we had Oregon sweeping Notre Dame. I was kind of surprised to see Notre Dame getting swept by Oregon. I actually had Notre Dame winning in that match. Turns out I forgot. Notre Dame has a lot of young talent, and Oregon has been battle-tested throughout the entire Pac-12 season. And unfortunately for Notre Dame, they just didn't have enough in the tank to take down Oregon. I do see Notre Dame getting back to this point of the season next season, as they returned quite a bit of talent. They returned Charlie Nigo, they returned Caroline Muth, they return, I believe her name is Aubrey Hamilton, and then Lindsay Miller, and then they get Paris Thompson, who enrolled early, but she is not a part of the team right now until next season, because she actually graduated early from high school, and now she's a part of the team, but she's just training. So there's that. But I think Notre Dame's going to be really good next year. I think the Fighting Irish could win the ACC next year. Like, it all depends on what's going to happen with Pitt, and what's going to happen with Louisville and Georgia Tech and some of the other teams like Florida State and maybe North Carolina and whatnot. So there's that. Anyway, rounding up the last two matchups in the second round, we had Western Kentucky upsetting Washington State. Now, this was not an upset to me. This, to me, was expected. Washington State has a very young team. They only have one senior. Matter of fact, I don't even think they start all their seniors. I think they just have one senior contributing off the bench. I'm not sure, though. Either way, Washington State had a very young team, and then they were facing a blistering hot Western Kentucky team that had not lost a match at any point going into the NCAA tournament. And honestly, Western Kentucky beating Washington State was no true surprise. Like, when you have an experienced team such as Western Kentucky that is in the NCAA tournament year in and year out, and they're facing a very young Washington State team, it's most likely not going to go well for the very young team. I will give Washington State credit, though. Washington State battled back from a 2-0 set deficit, and they forced a fifth set. Problem was that WKU was able to pull it out, but this is no surprise. Like, 15 seeds are often upended. I think I was more surprised that BYU pulled out the win against UCLA. Just my opinion. And then the last matchup of the second round was Kentucky beating UNLV. This was no surprise at all. Like, UNLV was 13-0. They hadn't really been fully challenged. Kentucky was battle-tested, having played teams like Missouri, South Carolina, Florida, Tennessee, even though that was all the way back in the fall. But regardless, Kentucky just had that it factor. They have so much talent on that team. It's not even funny. They have the Skinner girls, Avery and Maddie. They have Madison Lilly. They have Gabby Curry. It's just ridiculous, man. So that was that for the second round matchups. Now let's go to the Sweet 16, as eventually I will be getting y'all an update on the Wisconsin-Florida match. I guess Wisconsin's trailing in the fourth set 12-11, but they lead the match 2-1 over Florida. So anyway, to the Sweet 16, we had Wisconsin playing BYU. Now, this matchup actually occurred on Saturday as opposed to Sunday because BYU does not let their athletic athletes or student athletes play on Sundays. It's against religious rules. I'm not going to go fully into it, but the NCAA did agree that Wisconsin and BYU should play on Saturday as opposed to Sunday, and Wisconsin beat BYU, which was no surprise. So there's that. Now, as for the second Sweet 16 matchup of the upper right bracket, we had Florida upending Ohio State in 4 sets. Thinking about it, this is not as shocking as I thought it was going to be because Florida has a very, very, very experienced team. Ohio State has no experience in the NCAA tournament. They were fortunate to get past Missouri just because Missouri has been inconsistent. And a lot of new first-timers, even on the coaching side, because you look at the coaching experience, you have Mary Wise, who has been coaching for 30 years, and she has the second most active wins in terms of NCAA Division I coaches, while you have Jen Flynn Oldenburg, a first-year coach who just got Big Ten Coach of the Year, and she just led her team to their first NCAA tournament win since 2016. But Ohio State ran into a buzzsaw for Florida. I actually broadcast this game on Wellington Sports Radio yesterday. The turning point of that match was in set 2 when Florida came back from 24-20 down and scored the next 6 points to take set number 2, 26-24. Because if Ohio State wins that second set, it's a brand new ball game. It's a totally new perspective, and who knows? Maybe Ohio State's up 2-1 in the match, and Florida's on their heels. So Ohio State will be back next year. They just gotta get their players more experienced and whatnot, so there's that. So that's that for the Sweet 16 matchups of the upper left bracket. Now let's go to the bottom left bracket of the Sweet 16. We had Nebraska defeating Baylor in straight sets, which that's no surprise. Even without Lawrence Stivrins, Nebraska just had so much consistency. Baylor, despite having the one of the best players in the nation in Yesenia Presley, did not have a whole lot of consistency, and honestly, as a result, they struggled against Nebraska. Nebraska has all sorts of firepower on offense and on defense. And then, unfortunately for Baylor, they just could not keep up with the Huskers' fast-paced gameplay, and that was that for them. I feel bad for Yesenia Presley and the other seniors that unfortunately went out like that, but it kind of makes you wonder what would have happened if Pepperdine had played Nebraska. Like, I don't know if Pepperdine would have fared any better, but I think they maybe would have given Nebraska a challenge. Like, you never know, because sometimes the most dangerous team is a team that is a heavy underdog, but I had a feeling Baylor was going to beat Pep. But then I also knew that Nebraska was going to beat Baylor just because Baylor has very bad consistency. So there's that. And then the last matchup of the bottom left bracket of the Sweet 16, we had Texas defeating Penn State in 4 sets. Penn State actually took the first set 25-23, and then Texas stormed. Well, they didn't storm, but they managed to muscle their way through set number 2. And then set 3, Texas took that very tight set, 30-28, and then the fourth set, Texas had all the momentum, and they knocked off Penn State, winning 25-17. So there was that. Shout out to that match for delaying the Florida Ohio State match, because unfortunately I was delayed 1 hour when I went live on Wellington Sports Radio. So darn programming notes. Anyway, now let's move on to the upper right bracket. Now this bracket was was what's up. This bracket was lit. This portion of the bracket was lit in the Sweet 16. We had Pitt upsetting number 3 Minnesota in 5 sets. And that was a very magical moment for the Panthers, considering that was their first Sweet 16 win in team history, and they made the Elite Eight for the first time in team history. And again, I personally didn't think they were going to withstand against Minnesota's great wall of Reagan Pittman and everyone else, but Pitt was able to break through that wall courtesy of Kayla Lund, Chinazi Ende, Chiamaka Nwokolo, Sabrina Starks, the great defensive play from Kylie Levers, and I believe she's the setter, but you get what I mean. Basically, Pitt just overwhelmed Minnesota, which was very surprising. I knew it was going to have to go 5, but I didn't think Pitt was going to have to grind it out against them, because their 5-set matches against Syracuse and Pitt and Notre Dame didn't go great. I mean, I could excuse the Syracuse one, but I wish, I wish Minnesota had a little bit more firepower. I was very surprised to see Minnesota taking an L right there. Like, it seems like when Minnesota has high expectations, they always fall flat. And I should have seen this coming, but unfortunately, I did not. And as a result, they kind of ruined my bracket, because I actually had Minnesota going into the Final Four. Good job, Teran. As we say hello to Chris Lehman, he says, I wish I knew more about volleyball to be able to ask questions as good as you ask us on the Extra Mile. Thank you for your support, and while I don't have much to add, I'm here and listening. I appreciate you, Chris Lehman. Definitely check out the Extra Mile every Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. They do a great job with their show. Daryl Kinsey Jr., Chris Lehman, and Michael Ward do an awesome job. It's always a fun time. And, hey, there's no such thing as a bad question. So if you have any possible questions, or you're wondering if which team made it in and which team didn't, definitely let me know, because I'm still talking some NCAA women's volleyball tournament action. So there's that. Anyway, moving on to the last Sweet 16 matchup of the upper right portion of the bracket, we had Washington beating Louisville in 5 sets. Now, this was also a thriller. Not just because it went 5 sets, but because the 5th set was so amazing. Like, the 5th set, Louisville actually led 11-5, and I'm thinking, oh, this one's over. There's no way Louisville screws this one up. Like, good season, Washington, but the ACC rules above the Pac-12. And then Washington managed to make a comeback. I could not believe they actually did. I was very surprised that they came back from a 6-point deficit, where Louisville only needed 4 more points to win. So, I don't know what happened with Louisville. Did they shut down or something? Like, I know Washington has a lot of great players, such as Sam Drexel and Marin Grote, but my goodness, Louisville, you gotta stop playing in order to have a collapse like that. So that was that for Louisville. I can't say that's not disappointing, but it is. Anyway, moving on to the bottom left portion of the Sweet 16 bracket, we had Purdue beating Oregon 3-1. Now, this isn't too surprising just because Purdue is really good, but the 4th set, it looked as if Oregon was going to push it to a 5th set, but Purdue, being the talented team they were, was able to take that 4th set. The 4th set was very close. It was 26-24. I thought Purdue was going to choke it away. I'm like, oh, this one's going 5, and then it's like, nope. Purdue closed the door, and believe it or not, I guess everyone's saying Purdue has a great team, but what I guess I'm missing something with Purdue, because they have such a young team. They have a mixed bag in terms of underclassmen. Like, They have only 2 seniors, but they're very talented seniors at that. But they have a mixed bag of like juniors, seniors, or juniors, sophomores, and freshmen. I think they have 5 juniors, 5 freshmen, and 5 sophomores. So I don't know what everyone is so hyped about Purdue, but they're an Elite 8 team. So good for them. And then the last Sweet 16 matchup of the bracket, we had Kentucky beating Western Kentucky 3-0. That's no surprise because Kentucky just has so much firepower. I feel bad for Western Kentucky because they were playing for one of their players that passed away on Christmas Day of 2020, and it was heartbreaking to see their season come to an end. And they didn't play bad. It's just that Kentucky just outdid them in every aspect of the game of volleyball. So I feel bad for Western Kentucky, but against a team like Kentucky, you got to play pretty much perfect. So there's that right there. As I'm still trying to get an update on the Florida Wisconsin matchup. I'm still trying to find it, as I don't know where it is. All right, I found it. So Florida is leading 20-17 in set number 4. If Florida wins set 4, they push the match to a 5th set. But if Wisconsin wins set number 4, then Wisconsin advances to the Final Four, which is cool. But that's enough updates on that. Now let's jump to the Elite 8. We've only had 2 Elite 8 matches happening. We had Nebraska defeating Texas. Texas beating Nebraska. I apologize. So Texas beat Nebraska in 4 sets. The first set could have gone either way, but Texas just started to pull away midway through the first set. The second set, Nebraska led throughout most of that set, and it was a travesty for the Longhorns. They missed so many serves. I could not believe how many serves they missed. And then Nicklin Hames was just a force at the service line, as well as Lexi Sun. And then the third set, Texas started to take charge, and they started serving a lot better. And then Skylar Fields was just a force at the net. It was unbelievable. And then an unsung hero for Texas was Asia O'Neal, the daughter of Jermaine O'Neal, the redshirt. I believe she's a redshirt junior, I want to say. I kind of forgot. Either way, I believe she's a redshirt junior, if I'm not mistaken. Either way, she had a season-ending injury or surgery from last year, and now she's back. And she had a great day for Texas, as she had 10 kills, she had 5 blocks, and she hit over 500, or was it 400? I think it was over 400. Either way, she had a high hitting percentage. And then Skylar Fields had 18 kills, and she only had 1 hitting here, which was absolutely amazing. I also got to make note that the 4th set looked as if Nebraska was going to force a 5th set, but then Texas really started to get hot from the service line, courtesy of Logan Eggleston. She really propelled the struggling Longhorns in that 4th set. Like, Nebraska was up 13-8 at one point, and I'm just thinking, oh, this one's going to be a 5th set for sure. But then Logan Eggleston just kept excelling at the service line. I would not be shocked if Texas actually stunned Florida and or Wisconsin. I know stun is an interesting word to use against Florida, but Florida is still pretty good. They're still pretty much up there, and then Wisconsin, we're not sure about. Either way, Texas was able to pull off the win over Nebraska. I do feel bad for Nebraska seniors such as Lexi Sun and a few others, just because she did not play her best game. She had 7 kills and 7 hitting errors, and she also made a few other errors down the stretch of the 4th set, which she probably is kicking herself. And I don't know if she's going to take the extra year of eligibility, but if she does, that's awesome. But if she doesn't, then I wish her the best. However, I think I've been hearing that Nebraska has a great recruiting class coming in next season, and we could be seeing another repeat performance of a deep NCAA tournament run in the from the from the Huskers. But I will only believe it when I see it, because you never know. Because you also have the junior class from Penn State that looks good. You have a lot of returners for Purdue. You have another good recruiting class for Wisconsin and their returners, even though they lose over half their team. You have Ohio State returning most of their players. You have Minnesota returning a good chunk of their players. The standout players, at least, other than like Stephanie Samity and Reagan Pittman and whatnot. Either way, the Big Ten is going to be a war, and we don't know who's going to win it at this point, because it's too early to look that far ahead. So there's that about Nebraska. As I was talking about early on in the NCAA, or in the Elite Eight, we had a thriller of a game with Washington and Pitt, as Washington beat Pitt in 5 sets. Pitt took the first 2 sets, but then Washington won the 3rd set. They barely squeaked it out in the 4th set, and then the 5th set, Washington had all the momentum, and they pretty much dominated Pitt in that 5th set, and they advanced to their first Final Four, or semifinals, for the first time since 2013. So good for Washington. They managed to back the pack, which is cool and all. And who knows, maybe Washington can actually pull it off. I'm not entirely certain, but Washington does have a lot of great options. It all depends on if they get Kentucky. Like, if they get Kentucky, then I highly doubt it, because that's actually going to be a rematch of last year's Sweet 16 matchup between the Wildcats and the Huskies, in which Washington was able to win that match. So I imagine Kentucky's going to have a lot of fire in their bellies if they meet Washington. If Purdue makes it all the way to the semis, then I will be very intrigued on how that goes, just because Purdue hasn't really won a whole lot when it comes to women's volleyball, and then Washington hasn't won anything since, like, I think 2003, I want to say. It's been way too long since Washington has been in the NCAA championship. So Washington is kind of overdue for a trip to the championship game, but they have to get past Purdue or Kentucky, which is going to be an interesting matchup, to say the least, as that's pretty much that for the Elite Eight matchups. Like we still have Florida and Wisconsin going on. We have Florida still leading Wisconsin 22-18. This is actually quite surprising, just because I didn't think Wisconsin would be pushed like this. I knew they were going to get a tough matchup from what's their face, Florida, but I didn't think it'd be this tough. Like, holy Moses. Ooh, Nelly. Like, it would be quite amazing to see Wisconsin being pushed to a 5th set. They haven't gone 5 sets since, I think, when they played Penn State in the regular season last year, which Penn State actually won that 5-setter. So there is that right there. So we'll see what happens with Wisconsin and Florida, as yep, it's going to a 5th set. Florida won the 4th set 25-18, and Florida and Wisconsin are going 5 sets, which is absolutely amazing. It's the second, which is absolutely amazing. I am definitely tweeting out 5. It's the second 5-set match we've gotten in the Elite Eight, and we could have gotten another Elite Eight matchup had it not been for Nebraska kind of crumbling when Logan Eggleston was at the service line. But you can't fault the Huskers on that. Like, she's just a great player at the service line. So yeah. So that's pretty much that. I've pretty much brought everyone up to speed when it comes to the NCAA Women's Volleyball Tournament. We have two teams that have punched their tickets into the semifinals. We have two teams that are battling out in the Elite Eight, as Florida and Wisconsin will be duking it out in a fifth set. One team will go home while the other team will advance to the semifinals to play Texas. And then we still have Purdue and Kentucky left, which will be the last matchup of tonight. The semifinals are this Thursday. One semifinal starts at, I believe it starts at 4:30, and then the second one starts at 7. And then the championship match is this Saturday, and I want to say that starts at like 6 or so. Either way, I definitely will be tuning in to both of those. I may be even doing live calls for those, or live broadcasts on like USRN. It all depends on if I'm going to be calling them, or if Matt Owens is going to be calling them, or if Seth Thieves is going to be calling them, or Pierre Moss is going to be calling them. Either way, USRN should have coverage of both of those matches. And if not, I'll make it happen. But that is a lot of NCAA women's volleyball I had to talk about. Practically 50 minutes of that, but we are now all caught up to snuff, as we're actually going to take ourselves a quick little commercial break, and I'll be checking on the Wisconsin-Florida matchup. When we return, we will have more talk of some NCAA women's volleyball action, and we'll have some talk of NCAA men's volleyball action, because the Big West tournament is now going to get underway this week, and then we also have some NCAA beach volleyball talk to happen about. And Chris says, have a good night. Enjoyed catching the last 15 minutes or so. I'm going to a commercial break, but if you're going to be dipping, then thank you for listening, Chris. It really means a lot. So we're just going to head to a commercial break. When we come back, we've got some NCAA men's volleyball talk, and then we'll most likely have the conclusion of Wisconsin versus Florida. You're listening to Set Point here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We'll be right back after this.
Hey guys, it's Blake Henley, better known as H-Town Blake to some of you. Happy to announce that Bases Loaded is back in full force. We'll be bringing that high heat every Tuesday night here on IE Sports Radio. So come home, get ready, dig into that batter's box, and see if you can chase that high heat, baby. So we'll be coming to you live with all the stats, all the rundowns, all the division rivalries, and every team that's going to make the playoff push to get to that one and only October and get to the pinnacle of what baseball is, to hoist that Commissioner's Trophy when it's all said and done.
What's good, fight fans? It's your boy, Marcus Los Great, here to give you what you want, here to give you what you need. Yeah, man. Yeah. I'm coming to you live, straight from your mama's basement with a crispy, awesome white tea. We are coming to you live every Tuesday at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Powered by IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hey sports fans, do you like wine? Well, we've got the show for you. This is Let's Wine About Sports, a show where we talk about wine and sports simultaneously. From the classic Cabernet Sauvignon all the way down to the grapes that you've never even heard of before. Oh yeah, we cover it all. And we'll talk about a little bit of sports as well. Football, hockey, collegiate, women's sports, it doesn't matter. We're going to talk about it all, and we're going to whine about it all. So join me Monday at 8 p.m. on IU Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Ladies and gentlemen, hear me and hear me good. If you like sports, then you like the Wait a Minute Show. If you like comedy, then you like the Wait a Minute Show. If you like a different opinion coming from a different angle, then you like the Wait a Minute Show. So join me Saturday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with your host, Jelani J.B. Bodie. And of course, my man Lopan on the WaitAMinuteShow.com. Ain't that right, Lopan?
Attention, all sports fans! If you're someone who wakes up each morning with lists of sporting events to go along with your to-do list for the day, then you just might be a diehard. The world of sports is as vast as the ocean is deep, including the major leagues, the minor leagues, the college, and everything in between. This is me, your boy Larry B of IE Sports Radio, welcoming you to join me every Monday evening at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern on The Defining Moment, a show that focuses on what really matters in the sports world, sports themselves, and nothing outside of them. Once again, tune in for The Defining Moment with me, your boy Larry B, every Monday evening at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern on IE Sports Radio, right here on Spreaker.com. We'll see you there.
And we are back with the second part of Set Point. You could check out all of those amazing shows that were happening, including the Wait a Minute Show that's on X Squad affiliates. You can check out The Defining Moment with Larry B and all of his other amazing shows, such as 3 and Out College Edition with me, and Sports Couples Perspective with Larry B's girlfriend, Cecilia. You can also check out Let's Whine About Sports every Sunday at 6 p.m. Pacific Time, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. I need to go back and listen to that because yesterday I had a live broadcast of Florida and Ohio State, and unfortunately I cannot listen. But that is all right. You can also check out Gloves Off with Marcus Los Great, who comes on every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Pacific Time, 11 p.m. Eastern Time. And then you could also check out Bases Loaded with Brandon Buckingham, Blake Henley, and Chris Garcia every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time on StreamYard/YouTube. So those are just a few of our amazing shows that you could check out. So there's that right there. And back to the Florida-Wisconsin matchup. Florida is actually leading 5-2 in the 5th set, and this is actually the first 5-set match that Wisconsin has played this season. They have not had anyone really challenge them, and believe it or not, it'd be shocking to see Wisconsin lose. Like, if Wisconsin actually loses, I'd be very heartbroken. Like, I'd be heartbroken for the seniors, because they have, 8 seniors, and most of them are, All-Americans, and if they lose, that would just be saddening. And I'm just gonna give you updates as the match goes along. I'm getting updates on Twitter and whatnot. But Wisconsin took the first set, while Florida took the second set, and then Wisconsin took the third set. and then Florida took the fourth set. The first set was very tight, and then the next 3 sets were basically just a set full of runs. And then in fifth set, it's still anyone's set, but Florida is looking like they are hungry for the upset. The thing that sets Florida apart is Tiara Caesar and Thayer Hall. And unfortunately, I called her Tara instead of Tiara. I didn't know that's how it was pronounced, but that's my bad. But Thayer Hall and Tiara Caesar are both dynamic outside hitters. And then they have also got other talented players such as Lauren Forte, Allie McKissick, Marley Monserraz. It's just an absolute powerhouse of a team in Florida. And this is the team that finished second behind Kentucky. And here's the thing for Florida. They struggled in their fall as they actually lost a pair of matches. They lost to South Carolina, and then they also lost to Georgia. The South Carolina loss is kind of understandable, but the Georgia loss was kind of Florida currently leads 9-6 over Wisconsin in set 5. The Gators can actually taste the upset. If the thing about Florida is that you don't ever want to trail them and even if you are leading in that fifth set, they are never out of it. You could ask Missouri. Missouri led 13-10 in set 5, and it looked as if that Missouri was going to win that set. And then Florida scored the next 5 points. And the thing that sets Florida apart from most teams is their serving. They serve the ball really well. Monserraz is a great all-around threat, as she can even get kills as well. Her dump kills are that take everyone by surprise. And then Florida just has a lot of options. I don't know why Wisconsin's struggling. You would think with a bunch of All-Americans from the libero position, the setter position, the middle, and then the outside, you would think Wisconsin would have the edge. But this could be the factor of Wisconsin not having too many reps, considering, they haven't played since Saturday. Florida played last night, so they kind of have some adrenaline going on in their bodies. So there's that right there. And I don't know. It would just be a major disappointment if Wisconsin lost in the Elite Eight. But this isn't the first time we've seen number 1 seeds falling in the Elite Eight, as back in 2013, we had USC falling in the Elite Eight to Kansas. I want to say they lost to Kansas that year. They were down 2-0. They managed to win the next 2 sets, and then the 5th set, I think they led 13-11, and then they wound up losing, which was an absolute bummer for USC. That was the year they had Sammy Bricio in that outstanding historic year. Unfortunately, they fell to Kansas of all teams, which I find that hard to believe. And they were the number 1 seed overall, which is quite astounding. So there's that. But that was back in ancient history. Now we are here in the present. So we shall see if Wisconsin is actually able to hold on. And if they are, cool. If not, oh well. So now let's jump to some NCAA men's volleyball action. So the end of the regular season is here, as Hawaii is still undefeated. Actually, before we talk more about how amazing Hawaii is, let us get into the AVCA, this week's AVCA men's coaches poll. So 15 through 11, we have Ball State at 15, UC San Diego at 14, George Mason at 13, McKendree at 12, and NJIT at 11. 10 through 6, we have Loyola of Chicago at 10, Grand Canyon at 9, Penn State at 8, Long Beach State at 7, and UCLA at 6. 5 through 1, we have Pepperdine at 5, Lewis at 4, UC Santa Barbara at 3, BYU at 2, and the number 1 team in the nation, which is very, very obvious, is Hawaii, which is the 50th time in their team's history that they are ranked number 1 in the AVCA coaches poll, which is absolutely amazing. And they're not going anywhere. As Wisconsin just tied the game at 9-9, as Florida takes a timeout. Mary Wise is very wise to use that timeout, just so she could calm her team down. I don't have the game going on because, unfortunately, it's on ESPNU, and I don't get ESPNU, which really sucks, but it is what it is for me. Anyway, so back to the men's volleyball. So the Big West Conference has basically reached its postseason. They're going to have their annual Big West Conference men's volleyball tournament, and basically, it's now do or die for all these teams. It's win or go home time. As looking at the bracket, the number 1 seed is without a doubt Hawaii, which ran the table. Then you have your number 2 seed being Santa Barbara. Both those teams earned first round byes and are automatically into the semifinals, which means 3 through 6 is basically going to have to play in the first round. And I feel a sneeze coming on for some reason, but I just can't get it out. I'm sorry for those that didn't want to hear that. But anyway, the first matchup of the quarterfinals will be Long Beach State and UC Irvine. That Long Beach State is the 3 seed and UC Irvine is the 6 seed. Those two will be facing each other on April 22nd, which is the Thursday, and that'll be an interesting match just because it's a rivalry game. It's the black and blue rivalry, I want to say. But either way, Long Beach State has beaten Irvine twice. I could see them beating them again, but I wouldn't underestimate UC Irvine just because they had such a poor schedule, or they had a poor outing this season. They lost to Northridge, they lost to UC San Diego. And yeah. And then UC San Diego plays CSUN at 7 p.m. Pacific time, 7 p.m. Hawaii time, 10 p.m. Pacific time. The reason why I'm saying Hawaii time is because this Big West Conference tournament is being played in the Hawaiian Islands, as it's being played in Stan Sheriff Center at the University of Hawaii. Anyway, UC San Diego faces Cal State Northridge, or CSUN. On the same day, Long Beach State plays UC Irvine. Long Beach State and UC Irvine will face each other at 7:30 p.m. Pacific time, 4:30 p.m. Hawaii time. You also have UC San Diego and CSUN facing each other that same day. I'm just going to say this right now. I could see Long Beach State getting out of the first round with not too much problems. My only thing is, can they take Santa Barbara down a second time? I think they can, but Santa Barbara has some really powerful players. And this is probably UC Santa Barbara's best chance at winning an NCAA men's volleyball championship, because they have such a great team and they return practically everyone. Their only problem is they still can't get over the hump against Long Beach State. They did beat them early in the season, but that was Long Beach State's first match of the year, and we can excuse Long Beach State for being a little rusty. Now, UC San Diego CSUN is going to be very interesting. UC San Diego has a fairly decent team, but they face a CSUN team that is very underrated. Like, I've been saying this all throughout Twitter. Now we know, don't sleep on Northridge, because Northridge beat UC Irvine, which I guess isn't a big deal. And then CSUN just recently beat Long Beach State, which that was a huge win. Like, I could not believe Northridge pulled off the win. That was so amazing for them. Like, I can't get mad at that, honestly. Like they had an absolute big-time win this past Friday. They beat Long Beach State at the Mata Dome in 5 sets. It was their first win for CSUN over Long Beach State since 2016. As I gotta play the final point of the match. Here it is. Here we go. So this was the service ace that clinched the match for Northridge. And that's not it. I will find it. Uh-oh. I guess I won't have it. So I guess we won't have sound on this one, but either way, Cal State Northridge won off of a service ace, and that was that for that match. And good stuff for Northridge. And they actually did not finish at the bottom of the whatchamacallit, the rankings, which I guess is cool. I mean, it's basically pick your poison. You either take on a very hot Long Beach State team that's very underrated, or you're facing a very underrated or a somewhat underrated UC San Diego team, which if you win that matchup, you get to face Hawaii, which is the home team of the NCAA tournament. As Wisconsin now leads 14-12 in the fifth set, Florida is burning its last time out. Wisconsin is 1 point away from advancing to the NCAA tournament semifinals, while Florida needs to score 2 points to push it to a deuce game, and then they have to score 2 more points. They basically have to pull the same Omaha comeback that they did against UMKC. I'm sorry, KC fans, that I have to bring that up. And it is over. Florida loses to Wisconsin in the fifth set, 15-12, which means Wisconsin advances to the NCAA tournament semifinals, where they will play Texas in the semifinals. So let's give a round of applause for both teams who put forth an amazing effort. Yeah, so I just needed to tweet that out there, and yeah, Wisconsin survives. That is it. That is the tweet. That is basically that right there. And yeah, Wisconsin just barely survived. I couldn't believe that they had to get pushed like that, but it's whatever. It is what it is. Like it is what it is. So I'm not too surprised that Florida was going to give them a battle, but Wisconsin just was able to grind it out. Like, they trailed throughout most of that fifth set, and then they just came up big in the latter part of the set. So there's that. Back to NCAA men's volleyball. Okay, so my thing is, can Hawaii really run the table? I honestly think they can. They're definitely going to win the Big West Conference tournament. There's only one team that I think can take Hawaii down. That's Long Beach State. And I actually got clarification of what happened with Long Beach State and Hawaii with their second matchup, as there were complaints about the sound effects. As Hawaii's, I guess, sound team or production team had the sound effects of cheering fans cranked up too much, and then Alan Knight went over to the referees, and then basically they had to turn it down, and the referees didn't like that, so they basically turned down the volume to basically the average sound effect. So there's that. I still say this. I think Alan should be fortunate that there were no actual fans, because if that were the case, what would have happened was that he would not be able to hear his team at any part of the match, because Hawaii with a full gymnasium is basically the biggest road test of anyone's career in terms of volleyball, or in terms of any sporting event for that matter. So either way, I still think Long Beach State could give Hawaii a battle. I don't know if they could get the win, because Rado Parupanov is just absolutely a beast has a beast of a cannon. It's absolutely astounding. And there's also Colton Cowell, who does great. And then there's also Chaz Galloway. And then Patrick Gassman in the middle. Like, this Hawaii team, if there's a year that Hawaii's men's volleyball team has to win the NCAA championship, this is the year. I don't know too many teams that can knock off Hawaii. Like, there's only a handful of teams that can beat Hawaii. Long Beach State is one of them. BYU is another. I don't see if Santa Barbara gets to the final, they're not going to beat Hawaii. And I kind of wonder if Santa Barbara can make the NCAA tournament as an at-large team if they finish as the runner-up. Like, Santa Barbara has been ranked number 3 throughout most of the season, or most of the volleyball season. But my thing is that, do I really think they can get into the tournament? Like, do they have a good resume to the point where the NCAA tournaments committee is going to say, you know what, let's put UC Santa Barbara in? Like, it would be good for the Gauchos, considering we haven't seen a whole... I don't know... Actually, no. I was going to say UC Santa Barbara hasn't won any NCAA championships, but they did win in men's... I believe they won an NCAA championship in men's soccer, if I'm not mistaken. Either way, it would be a long time coming for their men's volleyball team. Like, their men's volleyball team has finally proven themselves as a great team, but unfortunately against Hawaii, they still can't get over the hump, which is a bummer for them, but it is what it is. Like, the Big West Conference is stacked this year. Like, you know it's stacked when Long Beach State was picked to finish 5th, but they finished 3rd, and then Irvine finished 5th, and then San Diego finished 4th, and then Hawaii finished 1st, which was absolutely expected, and then Santa Barbara finished 2nd. Which they were lucky to have finished 2nd outright, because had it not been for Northridge winning, then who knows what tiebreaker would have happened with Long Beach State and UC Santa Barbara. But I don't think there's too many teams that can take down I don't think there's too many teams that could knock off Hawaii. Like, it would be quite something if they could, but if they do, then cool. But if they don't, then it is what it is. Like, I wouldn't be too disappointed if Hawaii won. Like, it would be cool if they finally got the win. So looking at some of the other conferences, I actually don't know if when the Mountain Pacific Sports Federation conference is when that tournament is, embarrassingly enough. I'm on the UCLA men's website right now. So UCLA plays Concordia on Thursday, which is cool. So I'm just looking at where Pepperdine is at, and Pepperdine men's volleyball. And I guess Pepperdine is playing Stanford. So yeah, Pepperdine is playing Stanford. I know there's 7 teams in that conference. So Pepperdine is playing Stanford, and then I want to say USC is also playing, if my phone wants to work, Bueller. Yeah, I'm pretty sure USC men's volleyball is in this, and I want to say they're playing like GCU. I'm not certain, but be patient with me, y'all. I apologize if I'm making y'all wait. Yeah, so USC is playing Grand Canyon. So I was right in the previous week. So BYU has a first round bye. UCLA is the number 2 seed. Pepperdine is the number 3 seed. GCU is the 4 seed. USC is the 5 seed. Stanford is the 6th seed, and Concordia Irvine is the 7th seed. Concordia has beaten UCLA, but that was back when UCLA was missing a few players, so I don't think will have too much of an issue this go around. The whole NCAA, or not NCAA tournament, the whole MPSF tournament is being played at BYU. Why did I blank on that? It's being played in Provo, Utah. So BYU has home court advantage, just like Hawaii. I don't know why it was like that, but I will say this: it's just how it is. And I feel bad for the other teams in the tournament because they have to deal with the higher elevation and whatnot. And God knows if they play BYU, they have to deal with the raucous fans. I don't know if BYU is allowing fans, but it wouldn't surprise me if they are. So I personally think that the championship match will be Pepperdine and whatchamacallit, BYU. Why am I blanking on the team's names? Do I just talk so much about the Mountain West Conference that I don't remember all these teams' names? But BYU and GCU will be my semifinal matchup, and then Pepperdine and UCLA will be my semifinal matchup. I have Pepperdine beating UCLA, then BYU beating GCU, and then BYU will beat Pepperdine in somewhat of a thriller. I can at least see Pepperdine taking a set off of BYU, but I don't see BYU losing anytime soon now. So there's that. Just like how I don't see Hawaii losing anytime now when it comes to the Big West Conference tournament. Let's look at some of the other teams. Let's see some of the other teams that is happening. I want to see who. Okay, so Lewis is in the the MIVA tournament, and they play Loyola on Saturday. So I've got a lot of volleyball this Saturday. I've got the Big West Conference tournament in men's volleyball, the MPSF men's volleyball tournament, the MIVA tournament in men's volleyball, and then I've got the EIVA tournament, which actually had a COVID postponement, which forced Sacred Heart to drop out of the tournament. So speaking of the EIVA tournament, I definitely need to see what is going on, as apparently Penn State is playing St. Francis in the semifinals of the EIVA tournament on Thursday, but that doesn't tell me anything because I need to know who the other team is. So I presume the other team is NJIT as they face someone else. They're playing George Mason. So the EIVA semifinals will be New Jersey Institute of Technology versus George Mason, and Lewis versus St. Francis. So that's pretty much all of your NCAA Division 1 and 2 men's volleyball matchups. I wish I can get to NAIA, but I cannot because that's just too much volleyball, and that would basically make this show a lot longer. So I haven't even gotten to beach volleyball yet, which I'll get to that in a little bit. But as for the EIVA tournament, I say Penn State wins it. I think NJIT has that it factor, but I just think Penn State has a little bit more in the tank, as NJIT is actually making its first appearance in the EIVA tournament for the first time since 2008, which is really cool. And I hope NJIT actually wins the tournament and makes it into the NCAA tournament. It wouldn't shock me if NJIT made the NCAA, it wouldn't shock me if NJIT won the EIVA tournament. I know Penn State is good. I said Penn State's going to win the whole thing, but I think Penn State is going to need to earn that one against NJIT. Just saying, y'all. And it's being played at Penn State. So again, I don't know why all these home teams are getting these, or all these regular season champions are getting the home team treatment. I don't know if it was like that before the season started, but I will also say this, that Penn State has the home court advantage being played at Rec Hall or University Park. Either way, this is going to be a Penn State team that no one really wants to face, as I don't know where the MIVA tournament is being held at. It would not be surprised if it was being played at Romeoville. Oh, it is at Romeoville. So yeah, Lewis is playing Loyola of Chicago at home. So basically everyone here is getting home court advantage. Hawaii gets home court advantage in their Big West Conference tournament after they won the Big West regular season title. BYU gets home court advantage in the MPSF tournament after winning the regular season title. Penn State gets home court advantage winning the EIVA regular season title. And then Lewis gets home court advantage with the MIVA tournament as they will face Loyola in the MIVA final. So there is that right there, and they are basically in the finals. They're basically in the finals of the MIVA tournament. I hope Loyola does win. It would be really funny if they did, because I don't like Lewis. It's like they're so highly ranked, and yet they don't live up to their reputation. They're not as good as like some of these other teams. Like, I think Long Beach State is better than Lewis. I think Long Beach State could beat Lewis, personally. And I would put money on that. So, don't hate me, Lewis fans, but it is the truth. The truth shall set you free. Well, that's going to be that for NCAA men's volleyball talk. There was a lot that I just went on, but I basically had to get through it. So let's move on to a little beach volleyball action. There was again, I haven't been really paying attention to that, and I apologize. But I do know USC had themselves a great week last week as they took down some top 10 opponents in the Center of Effort Challenge. They even took down number 1 ranked UCLA as they went 4-0 in the event as they beat they beat number 8 Grand Canyon 5-0. Then they beat UCLA 3-2. This took place on Saturday. And why they say where are all their other matches? Like, what other matches did they play? And what other 4 matches did they play? Because I only saw their UCLA Grand Canyon match. Friday they beat Loyola Marymount 4-1, and then they beat Cal Poly 5-0. It was at Cal Poly, by the way, so everything was at Cal Poly. So this week USC plays UCLA on Thursday, which is just what I need. More volleyball on Thursday, as if I'm not going to be getting enough of NCAA women's volleyball on that day as well. That is a 3 p.m. Pacific start time, so fortunately I will be able to get updates on that game. Maybe I'll try to look at that game, but it is going to be played at UCLA, so we'll see if UCLA can take down USC, because USC has beaten UCLA 2 times this season. Early in the season, USC beat UCLA 5-0, and then in the second go-around, it was a lot tighter as USC beat UCLA 3-2. This is basically the third matchup, as next week, USC and UCLA will have the Pac-12 championships, and depending on who wins that and how every team does depends on what happens going forward with the NCAA tournament. Though I could see USC and UCLA making the NCAA tournament as no matter who's the at-large team. Regardless, I think the NCAA tournament is still up for grabs. You still have LSU and Florida State that's up there, so I don't doubt anybody. And heck, like I said, even LMU could win the NCAA beach volleyball tournament. And maybe Cal Poly, maybe Stanford, maybe Cal Poly, maybe Long Beach State. No, not that. I'm kidding. I'm just saying that because I'm a student. I'm just saying that just to have fun. Either way, that's going to do it for the NCAA beach volleyball talk. Now, before we sign off here, I actually do want to talk just a little bit about some high school boys volleyball that's happening. So, most of the highly ranked teams are in California, and I have seen some good matchups. I saw this past Saturday, Newport Harbor, my alma mater, taking on Loyola. Unfortunately, Loyola pulled out the win, but Newport Harbor is not to be slept on. Newport Harbor was coming off of a big win over Huntington Beach. Like in the CIF Southern Section rankings, Newport Harbor was actually ranked 6th under San Clemente, which they actually beat in their first game of the season. Huntington Beach was ranked 4th, 2 spots ahead of Newport Harbor, but because Newport Harbor won, those two got shuffled around along with San Clemente. And then Corona Del Mar just started its season last week as the Sea Kings beat Marina. I don't know the score of that, unfortunately. But then they lost to Miracosta on the road last Wednesday. And then they beat Laguna Beach, which has been atrocious this season. So this week, Corona Del Mar takes on Newport Harbor at Newport Harbor High School. I wish I could be attending that, but I'll have to briefly recap it, or hopefully there will be a live stream that I'll be able to rewatch afterward. Either way, I think that Battle of the Bay boys volleyball match is going to be fun. It's always a fun matchup when it comes to Battle of the Bay. Me personally, I think Newport Harbor will win, but if Newport Harbor plays the way they did against Loyola, then it could be a little tough, because against Loyola, Newport Harbor was just outmatched. Dylan Klein, who's going to USC, is a freaking stud. That dude has a cannon for an arm. And I saw pretty much the whole thing on the live stream, and honestly, Loyola is one of the favorites to win in all of this year. Them and Miracosta. And then everyone else is kind of a distant third and whatnot. However, I think CIF to me is wide open this year. I mean, the thing that kind of sets everyone apart is the fact that no one has film on anyone and no one knows what to expect. And I hope I'm right. If not, then it is what it is. But I think when it comes to high school boys volleyball in California, I think this season is just getting started. And I'm very excited to see what will happen with the Southern California boys volleyball teams going forward. Again, me as a Sailor fan, I hope Newport Harbor wins it all, but they still have a lot of kinks to work out. They still have a fairly young team. In the near future, I could see them maybe pulling out a championship, but it's baby steps for them. But they're trending in the correct direction. So I won't talk too much about high school boys volleyball. I normally save that for after college volleyball season. I normally would talk about that maybe at the fall. I've never done set point to the point where I've had to talk about high school volleyball. The reason being is because set point hasn't been around for too long. And remember, last year everything got canceled because of COVID and whatnot. So unfortunately, that was that right there. However, we basically have everything going back to the way it was, or at least close to the way it was. So there's that right there. But that's going to do it for today's episode of Set Point. Thank you all for tuning in. Whether you're listening live, I appreciate it. Whether you're listening via podcast form, I appreciate it. I really, really do appreciate you all taking time out of your day and hearing me ramble on about volleyball for the past 1 hour and counting 38 plus minutes. So there's that right there, and I appreciate Adam Karnick for popping in the chat room, Davidson Crooks for popping in the chat room, and Chris Lehman for popping in the chat room. Definitely check out Chi-Town Weekly, which went on before Set Point went on, and definitely check out Fast Break with Dentarius Locke and Davidson Crooks. Unfortunately for D-Locke, his Gators lost. His Florida Gators women's volleyball team lost. I don't know if he's really a volleyball fan, but I'm sorry, D-Locke, your Gators lost. But regardless, that is going to do it for this episode of Set Point. Without any further delay, it is time to drop the beat, because I'm about to dip like a banana in chocolate. You feel me? Thank you all once again for tuning in to Set Point. I greatly appreciate it. If you listen to this via the whole live stream, I very, 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 very much appreciate it. If you're listening through podcast form, I very, 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 very appreciate that as well. I will be back probably on Friday to do the SoCal Supreme Sports Show. I unfortunately won't be back at my old time, but I'll still be back on Friday, probably doing it before State of Ohio Sports Show. For everyone here at iSports Radio, this is Teran Rodriguez signing off. Have yourselves a great rest of the evening. Have yourselves a great rest of the week. I know it's Monday, but you all have got this. We're all going to persevere through this. No matter what you're going through, you all will be able to get the job done. Have yourselves a great rest of the week, and I will see you on Friday, maybe even earlier, from SoCal Supreme Sports Show, or a live broadcast for the NCAA Women's Volleyball. Regardless, have a great night, everybody.